My father's text arrived while I was packing the engagement gift I had spent weeks choosing. Don't come. The guest list is final. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just 12 words that erased me from my own sister's biggest day. I quietly unpacked my suitcase, canceled my flight, and went back to Washington without telling anyone how badly it hurt. 3 weeks later, a White House magazine landed on my father's coffee table. The moment he saw my photograph on the cover, his phone wouldn't stop ringing. But the first call that reached me wasn't an apology. It was my sister screaming, "How could you do this to our family?" My name is Emily Carter. I'm 30 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my family treated me like someone who was always one mistake away from being forgotten. My younger sister, Olivia, was the sunshine of our house. She was outgoing, funny, effortlessly charming, and somehow every family gathering became another celebration of whatever she had accomplished that week. Birthdays, graduations, promotions, it didn't matter. If Olivia smiled, the room revolved around her. I wasn't jealous of her success. I simply wished my parents had room in their hearts for both of us. While Olivia loved parties, I buried myself in books. I earned scholarships, graduated near the top of my class, and eventually accepted a position with a federal agency in Washington, D.C. The work was demanding, and because much of it involved sensitive projects, I couldn't casually explain what I did. Whenever relatives asked, I simply smiled and said, "I work for the government." That answer never impressed my parents. Dad would laugh and tell everyone. Translation? She pushes paperwork somewhere. Mom usually nodded before adding, "Emily's always been too serious. She works all the time and forgets what real life looks like." I stopped correcting them years ago. The truth was I loved my work. Every long day reminded me that dedication mattered more than applause. My supervisors respected me. My colleagues trusted me. Ironically, strangers appreciated qualities my own family barely noticed. When Olivia announced her engagement, I was genuinely happy for her. Despite everything, she was still my sister. The engagement party was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon, and getting leave wasn't easy. I rearranged meetings weeks in advance, finished projects early, and even traded assignments with another colleague so I could fly home. I wanted to be there, not because my parents deserved another chance, because I hoped maybe this time things would be different. I bought Olivia a beautiful crystal keepsake engraved with her engagement date and ordered my parents a custom family portrait frame I'd seen Mom admire months earlier. I imagined surprising everyone, hugging my sister, sharing dinner, maybe laughing together the way families were supposed to. The morning of my flight, while I was zipping my suitcase, my phone buzzed.
Dad.
I smiled before opening the message. The smile disappeared instantly. "Don't come. The guest list is final. We don't want unnecessary tension today." I read it once, then again, then a third time. No explanation. No apology. Just 12 words telling me I no longer belonged at my own sister's engagement. For several minutes, I simply sat on the edge of my bed staring at the packed suitcase. I thought about calling, about asking what I had done wrong, about reminding him that I was his daughter. Instead, I quietly unpacked every shirt, folded every dress back into my closet, canceled my flight, and placed Olivia's unopened gift on the shelf beside the front door. I sent only 4 words. "I understand. Congratulations, Dad." He never replied. An hour later, I walked back into my office in Washington. My coworkers looked surprised. "Thought you were heading home," one of them said. I forced a small smile. Plans changed. Nobody asked another question. That afternoon, I buried myself in work, determined not to think about the celebration happening hundreds of miles away without me. I didn't know that just 2 weeks later, one unexpected phone call from my director would quietly begin changing everything my family believed they knew about me. 2 weeks passed, and life settled back into its familiar rhythm. I arrived at the office before sunrise, buried myself in meetings, reviewed reports, and convinced myself that my family's rejection no longer mattered. Every time I glanced at the unopened engagement gift still sitting near my apartment door, I reminded myself that some people stop hurting only after they stop expecting. Then, on a Thursday morning, my director knocked on my office door. Emily, got a minute? I followed him into the conference room, wondering if another assignment had landed on my desk. Instead, he smiled. Congratulations. I blinked. For what? The White House Communications Office selected our department for a national feature highlighting public servants making meaningful contributions. They reviewed dozens of candidates. He paused. They chose you. For a moment, I honestly thought he was joking. Me? You've spent years coordinating projects that affected thousands of people. You never asked for recognition, and that's exactly why they noticed. A week later, photographers arrived. There were interviews, professional portraits, and conversations about leadership, integrity, and public service. Because of security restrictions, the article couldn't discuss specific operations, but it highlighted years of dedication, teamwork, and the impact our office had quietly made behind the scenes. I never mentioned it to my parents, not because I wanted revenge, because experience had taught me they probably wouldn't care. 3 days after the interview, the magazine was published nationwide. I picked up a copy from the lobby, smiled at the finished article, and placed it inside my desk drawer before returning to work. To me, it was an honor. Nothing more. Hundreds of miles away, Olivia and her fiancé were meeting a potential wedding sponsor at a downtown law office. While waiting in the reception area, Olivia casually picked up a magazine from the coffee table. She flipped through a few pages absent-mindedly. Then she froze. Across 2 full pages was my photograph. I stood beside a White House backdrop, wearing formal professional attire, smiling calmly beneath the headline recognizing public servants whose leadership had strengthened national programs through years of quiet service. Below the photograph was my name, Emily Carter. Olivia reportedly stared at the page for nearly a minute before grabbing her phone. She called Dad immediately. You need to buy this magazine. Dad thought she was exaggerating, until he found a copy himself. He later admitted he read the article 3 times. Mom cried, not because she suddenly understood me, because she realized thousands of strangers knew more about her daughter than she did. Within hours, relatives started calling. Neighbors texted. Old family friends shared photographs of the article online. Everyone asked exactly the same question. We saw Emily in the White House magazine. We didn't know she did work like that. Why wasn't she at Olivia's engagement party? Suddenly, the story my parents had told everyone that I had been too busy to attend began falling apart. Dad's first text arrived that evening. Why didn't you tell us? I read it, then locked my phone. 5 minutes later, another message appeared. We're proud of you. An hour later came another.
Come home this weekend.
We'd love to celebrate. Celebrate? I almost laughed. They had wanted me in the family picture 3 weeks earlier. Now they wanted me standing beside them, because strangers already knew my name. I never answered. Around 9 that night, my phone rang. Olivia. For several seconds, I considered ignoring it. Instead, I answered. She didn't say hello. Her voice was already shaking. Emily, how could you do this to our family? I closed my eyes. What are you talking about? Everyone keeps asking why you weren't at my engagement party. They're making Mom and Dad look terrible. I took a slow breath before answering as calmly as I could. They aren't asking because of me, Olivia. They're asking because you told everyone I chose not to come. Silence filled the line. Then I quietly added one sentence. The truth has a way of introducing itself, even when no one invites it. The next morning, I muted my phone and went to work as if nothing had happened. By lunchtime, my director walked past my office and smiled. I think you're becoming famous. I laughed. I hope not. He pointed toward the lobby. You've got visitors. The moment I stepped outside, I froze. My father, my mother, and Olivia were standing there. For the first time in years, they had driven all the way to Washington without asking me first. Dad stepped forward. Emily, can we talk? I looked at the security desk, then back at them. There's a cafe across the street. Nobody spoke during the short walk. Once we were seated, Dad cleared his throat several times before finally looking at me. I owe you an apology. I waited. When that magazine came out, he began, I realized we never really understood what you've been doing. I nodded quietly. No, I said. You never tried to. Mom's eyes immediately filled with tears. It wasn't like that. Really? I looked at all three of them. When I graduated with honors, Dad asked if Olivia had found a date for prom. Nobody answered. When I accepted my job in Washington, you told everyone I was just pushing paperwork. Dad lowered his eyes. When I requested time off to come celebrate Olivia's engagement, you told me not to come because the guest list was final. The silence became almost unbearable. Finally, Dad spoke. I thought keeping things simple was best. For who? He couldn't answer. Instead, he sighed deeply. I've made mistakes. You didn't make one mistake. I kept my voice calm. You made the same choice for years. Mom reached across the table. I should have defended you. Yes. She slowly pulled her hand back. I was afraid of causing arguments, and staying silent became easier. Tears rolled down her face because she knew it was true. Then Olivia finally spoke. I need to say something. I looked at her. I knew Mom and Dad treated me differently. She swallowed hard. I never stopped them because, honestly, it benefited me. Her voice cracked. I should have invited you myself. You could have. I'm sorry. For the first time, her apology sounded genuine. No excuses. No blaming anyone else. Just responsibility. I appreciated that. But appreciation wasn't the same as trust. Dad leaned forward. Come home this weekend. I smiled sadly. Why? So, we can celebrate you. I shook my head. You had 30 years to celebrate me. Nobody argued. Because they couldn't. I reached into my bag and placed the unopened engagement gift on the table. I bought this before your text. Olivia stared at the neatly wrapped package. You still kept it? I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. She held it carefully, almost afraid to touch it. I'm so sorry. I know. Dad's voice became almost a whisper. Can you forgive us? I looked out the cafe window toward the federal buildings that had become my second home. I already have. All three of them looked relieved. Then I finished my sentence. But forgiveness doesn't erase history. Their smiles faded. I don't hate any of you. I simply refuse to keep chasing people who only notice me after strangers tell them I matter. No one had a response. I stood and adjusted my jacket. I have a meeting. Mom hugged me tightly before I left. Dad hesitated, then quietly said, I'm proud of you. I smiled politely. I hope one day you'll be proud of people before the rest of the world gives you permission. I walked back toward my office without looking behind me. Later that afternoon, I passed the framed magazine hanging in our department hallway. For a moment, I stopped and smiled. Not because my picture was inside, but because for the first time in my life, I truly understood something no award, promotion, or headline could ever teach me. My worth had never depended on my family's approval. It had been mine all along.